Hey y'all, it's Kim. I hope y'all had a good weekend. I've been kind of busy, sort of, kind of. Anyway, so this will be video 18 of the Senate torture report. And let me tell you what the actual report's called. It says Report of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Committee Study of the Central Intelligence Agency's Detention and Interrogation Program. So after 9/11, many suspected terrorists were detained for extended periods and tortured, according to this report. Um, I think there were people that were whistleblowers. A guy named John Kiriakou, he was in, I think, Alex Station for, which is basically the Osama bin Laden desk with the CIA. And he was asked to go into this enhanced interrogation program. And then once he started reading what they were going to do, it was like, this is torture. So anyway, he decided not to do it. And then pretty much from there, his career kind of blew up because he kind of refused, but he kind of knew about it, what was going on with some of these sites. So anyway, let's get going. So right here, unlike during most of the CIA's interrogation program during the time that CIA headquarters was seeking policy reaffirmation, the CIA responded to infractions in the interrogation program as reported through CIA cables and other communications. Although redacted, the chief of the interrogations program in RDG does not appear to have been investigated or reprimanded for training interrogators on the abdominal slap before it was approved, training significant numbers of new interrogators to conduct interrogations on potentially compliant detainees or conducting large numbers of water dousing on detainees without requesting or obtaining authorization. The CIA removed his certification to conduct interrogations in late July 2003 for placing a broom handle between the knees of a detainee while that detainee was in a stress position. CIA headquarters also decertified two other interrogators, redacted CIA Officer 1 and redacted in the same period, although there are no official records of why those decertifications occurred. So, two, the CIA provides inaccurate information to select members of the National Security Council, represents the termination of this program will result in loss of life, possibly extensive. Policymakers reauthorize the program. On July 29, 2003, DCI Tenant and CIA General Counsel Mueller attended a meeting with Vice President Cheney, National Security Advisor Rice, Attorney General Ashcroft, and White House Counsel Gonzalez, among others, seeking policy reaffirmation of its coercive interrogation program. The presentation included a list of the CIA's standard and enhanced interrogation techniques. CIA General Counsel Mueller also provided a description of the waterboard interrogation technique, including the inaccurate representation that it had been used against KSM 119 times and Abu Zubaydah 42 times. The presentation warned National Security Council principals in attendance that termination of this program will result in loss of life, possibly extensive. The CIA officers further noted that 50% of CIA intelligence reports on Al Qaeda were derived from detainee reporting. Major threats were countered and attacks averted because of the use of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques. The CIA provided specific examples of attacks averted as a result of using the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques, including references to the U.S. consulate in Karachi, the Heathrow plot, the second wave plot, and Ayman Ferris, I guess that's what you're saying, as described later in the summary and in greater detail in Volume 2. These claims were inaccurate. After the CIA's presentation, Vice President Cheney stated, and National Security Advisor Rice agreed that the CIA was executing administration policy and carrying out its interrogation program. The National Security Council principals at the July 2003 briefing initially concluded it was not necessary or advisable to have a full principals committee meeting to review and reaffirm the program. A CIA email noted that the official reason for not having a full briefing was to avoid press disclosures, but added that it is clear to us from some of the run up meetings we had with White House counsel that the White House is extremely concerned Secretary of State Powell would blow his stack if he were to be briefed on what's been going on. So, National Security Advisor Rice, however, subsequently decided that Secretary of State Colin Powell and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld should be briefed on the CIA interrogation program prior to recertification of the covert action. As described, both were then formally briefed on the CIA program for the first time in a 25-minute briefing on September 16th, 2003. On September 4th, 2003, CIA records indicate that CIA officials may have provided Chairman Roberts, Vice Chairman Rockefeller, and their staff directors a briefing regarding the administration's reaffirmation of the program. Neither the CIA nor the committee has a contemporaneous report on the content of the briefing or any confirmation that the briefing occurred. Okay, additional oversight and outside pressure in 2004, the ICRC Inspector General, Congress, and the U.S. Supreme Court. ICRC pressure leads to detainee transfers. Department of Defense officials informs the CIA that the U.S. government should not be in the position of causing people to disappear, and the CIA provides inaccurate information on CIA detainee to the Department of Defense. In January 2004, the ICRC, I think that's the International something of Red Cross. Oh, I've seen this in the report earlier. Sent a letter to Redacted indicating that it was aware that the United States government was holding unacknowledged detainees in several facilities in country incommunicado for extensive periods of time, subjected to unacceptable conditions of internment, to ill treatment and torture, while deprived of any possible recourse. According to the CIA, the letter included a fairly complete list of CIA detainees to whom the ICRC had not had access. This prompted CIA headquarters to conclude that it was necessary to reduce the number of detainees in CIA custody. The CIA subsequently transferred at least 25 of its detainees in country to the U.S. military and foreign governments. The CIA also released 5 detainees. Hold on, let me make sure. Okay, that was it. Okay, the CIA provided a factually incorrect description to the Department of Defense concerning one of the 18 CIA detainees transferred to U.S. military custody in March 2004. The transfer letter described CIA detainee Ali John as the most trusted bodyguard of Jalaluddin Haqqani, a top AQ target of the an Al-Qaeda of the U.S. government, who was captured in the village of Redacted on June something of 2002. Although there was an individual named Ali John captured in the village of Redacted on June 2002, CIA records indicate that he was not the detainee being held by the CIA in the country Redacted facility. The Ali John in CIA custody was apprehended circa early August of 2003 during the U.S. military operation Redacted in Zormat Valley, Paktia province, Afghanistan. CIA records indicate that Ali John was transferred to CIA custody after his satellite phone rang while he was in military custody, and the translator indicated the caller was speaking in Arabic. After his transfer to the U.S. military custody, Ali John was eventually released on July redacted 2004 in response to the ICRC's formal complaint about detainees being kept in country without ICRC access. State Department officials met with senior ICRC officials in Geneva and indicated that it was U.S. policy to encourage all countries to provide ICRC access to detainees, including country redacted. While the State Department made these official representations to the ICRC, the CIA was repeatedly directing the same country to deny the ICRC access to the CIA detainees. In June 2004, the Secretary of State ordered the U.S. ambassador in that country to deliver a demarche. In essence, demanding the country provide full access to all country redacted detainees, which included detainees being held at the CIA's behest. These conflicting messages from the United States government, as well as the increased ICRC pressure on the country for failing to provide access, created significant tension between the United States and the country in question. Later that year, in advance of the National Security Council Principals Committee meeting on September 14, 2004, officials from the Department of Defense called the CIA to inform the CIA that Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz would not support the CIA's position that notifying the CIA for the ICRC of all detainees in U.S. government custody would harm U.S. national security. According to an internal CIA email following the call, the Deputy Secretary of Defense had listened to the CIA's arguments for non-disclosure, but believed that it was time for full notification. The email stated that the Department of Defense supported the U.S. government's position that there should be full disclosure to the ICRC unless there were compelling reasons of military necessity or national security. The email added that the Department of Defense did not believe an adequate articulation of military necessity or national security reasons warranting non-disclosure existed, that DOD is tired of taking hits for CIA ghost detainees, and that the U.S. government should not be in the position of causing people to disappear. Despite numerous meetings and communications within the executive branch throughout 2004, the United States did not formally respond to the January 6, 2004 ICRC letter until June 13, 2005. Wow. CIA leadership calls draft inspector general special review of the program imbalanced and inaccurate, responds with inaccurate information. CIA seeks to limit further review of the CIA's detention and interrogation program by the Inspector General. The CIA's Office of the Inspector General, the OIG, was first informed of the CIA's detention and interrogation program in November 2002, 9 months after Abu Zubaydah became the CIA's first detainee. As described, the information was conveyed by the DDO, who also informed the OIG of the death of Gul Rahman. In January of 2003, the DDO further requested that the OIG investigate allegations of unauthorized interrogation techniques against Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri. Separately, the OIG received information that some employees were concerned that certain covert agency activities at an overseas detention and interrogation site might involve violations of human rights, according to the OIG's special review. During the course of the OIG's interviews, numerous CIA officers expressed concerns about the CIA's lack of preparedness for the detention and interrogation of Abu Zubaydah. Other CIA officers expressed concern about the analytical assumptions driving interrogations, as well as the lack of language and cultural background among members of the interrogation teams. Some CIA officers describe pressure from CIA headquarters to use the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques, which they attribute to faulty analytical assumptions about what detainees should know. As the chief of RDG, redacted, stated to the OIG in February 2003 interview, CTC does not know a lot about Al Qaeda, and as a result, headquarters analysts have constructed models of what Al Qaeda represents to them. Redacted noted that the agency does not have the linguists or subject matter experts it needs. The questions sent from CTC, Osama bin Laden, or the UBL to the interrogators are being on SIGINT or signals intelligence and other intelligence that oftentimes is incomplete or wrong. When the detainee does not respond to the question, the assumption at headquarters that the detainee is holding back and knows more, and consequently, headquarters recommends resumption of EITs. This difference of opinion between the interrogators and headquarters as to whether the detainee is compliant is the type of ongoing pressure the interrogation team is exposed to. Redacted believes the waterboard was used recklessly too many times at Abu Zubaydah at Detention Site Green, based in part on faulty intelligence. One senior interrogator, redacted, informed the OIG that differences between CIA headquarters and the interrogators at the CIA detention sites were not part of the official record. According to redacted, all of the fighting and criticism is done over the phone and is not put into cables, and that CIA cables reflect things that are all rosy. As is described elsewhere and reflected in the final OIG special review, CIA officers discussed numerous other topics with the OIG, including conditions at detention site Cobalt, specific interrogations, the videotaping of interrogations, the administration of the program, and concerns about the lack of an end game for CIA detainees, as well as the impact of possible public revelations concerning the existence and operation of the CIA's detention and interrogation program. In January 2004, the CIA Inspector General circulated for comment to various offices within the CIA a draft of the OIG special review of the CIA's detention and interrogation program. Among other matters, the OIG special review described divergences between the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques as applied and as described to the Department of Justice in 2002, the use of unauthorized techniques, and oversight problems related to detention site Cobalt. The draft OIG special review elicited responses from the CIA's Deputy Director for Operations, the Deputy Director for Science and Technology, the Office of General Counsel, and the Office of Medical Services. Several of the responses, particularly those from CIA General Counsel Scott Mueller and CIA Deputy Director for Operations James Pavitt, were highly critical of the Inspector General's draft special review. General Counsel Mueller wrote that the OIG special review presented an imbalanced and inaccurate picture of the counterterrorism detention and interrogation program, and claimed the OIG special review, on occasion, quoted or summarized selectively and misleadingly from CIA documents. Deputy Director for Operations James Pavitt wrote that the OIG special review should have come to the conclusion that our efforts have thwarted attacks and saved lives, and that EITs, including the waterboard, have been indispensable to our successes. Pavitt attached to his response a document describing information the CIA obtained as a result of the lawful use of EITs that stated the evidence points clearly to the fact that without the use of such techniques, we and our allies would have suffered major terrorist attacks involving hundreds, if not thousands, of casualties. A review of CIA records found that the representations in the PAVIT material were almost entirely inaccurate. In addition to conveying inaccurate information on the operation, management, and effectiveness of the CIA program, CIA leadership continued to impede the OIG in its efforts to oversee the program. In July 2005, Director Goss sent a memorandum to the Inspector General to express several concerns regarding the in-depth, multifaceted review of the CIA CTC. The CIA director wrote that he was increasingly concerned about the cumulative impact of the OIG's work on CTC's performance, adding that I believe it makes sense to complete existing reviews before opening new ones. Director Goss added, to my knowledge, Congress is satisfied that you're meeting its requirements with regard to the CIA's detention and interrogation program. At the time, however, the vice chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence was seeking a committee investigation of the CIA program, in part because of the aspects of the program that are not being investigated by the Office of Inspector General. In April 2007, CIA Director Michael Hayden had his senior counselor, an individual with the CIA who was accountable only to the CIA director, conduct a review of the Inspector General's practices. Defending the decision to review the OIG, the CIA told the committee that there were morale issues that the CIA director needs to be mindful of, and that the review had uncovered instances of bias among OIG personnel against the CIA's detention interrogation program. 2008, the CIA director announced the results of his review of the OIG to the CIA workforce and stated that the Inspector General had chosen to take a number of steps to heighten the efficiency, assure the quality, and increase the transparency of the investigative process. The CIA does not satisfy Inspector General special review recommendation to assess the effectiveness of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques. The final May 2004 OIG special review included a recommendation that the CIA's DDO conduct a study of the effectiveness of the CIA's interrogation techniques within 90 days. Prompted by the recommendation, the CIA tasked two senior CIA officers to lead an informal operational assessment of the CIA detainee program. The reviewers were tasked with responding to 12 specific terms of reference, including an assessment of the effectiveness of each interrogation technique and environmental deprivation, to determine if any techniques or deprivation should be added, modified, or discontinued. According to a CIA memorandum from the reviewers, their review was based on briefings by CTC personnel. A discussion with the three senior CTC managers who played key roles in running the CIA detainee program, and a review of 9 documents, including the OIG special review and an article by the CIA contractors who developed the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques, Hammond, Dunbar, and Grayson Swigert, as described in this summary and in more detail in Volume 2. These documents contain numerous inaccurate representations regarding the operation and effectiveness of the CIA program. There are no records to indicate the 2 CIA officers or senior officers reviewed the underlying interrogation cables and intelligence records related to the representations. Their resulting assessment repeated information found in the documents provided to them and reported that the CIA detainee program is a success, providing unique and valuable intelligence at the tactical level for the benefit of policymakers, warfighters, and the CIA's covert action operators. The assessment also reported the regulations and procedures for handling detainees were adequate and clear, and that the program had responded swiftly, fairly, and completely to deviations from the structure program. Nonetheless, the assessment came to the conclusion that detention and interrogations activities should not be conducted by the CIA, but by experienced U.S. law enforcement officers, stating the Directorate of Operations should not be in the business of running prisons or temporary detention facilities. The DO should focus on its core mission, its clandestine intelligence operations. Accordingly, the DO should continue to hunt, capture, and render targets and then exploit them for intelligence and ops leads once in custody. The management of their incarceration and interrogation should be conducted by appropriately experienced U.S. law enforcement officers because that is their charter and they have the training and experience. The assessments noted that the CIA program required significant resources at a time when the CIA was already stretched thin. Finally, the authors wrote that they strongly believe that the president and congressional oversight members should receive a comprehensive update on the program, given the intense interest and controversies surrounding the detainee issue. On January 26, 2005, DCI Goss forwarded the senior officer review to Inspector General John Helgerson. The DCI asked whether the review would satisfy the Inspector General recommendation for an independent review of the program. On January 28, 2005, the Inspector General responded that the senior officer review would not satisfy the concern raised by the OMS that studying the results of CIA interrogations would amount to human experimentation, stating, I fear there was a misunderstanding. OIG did not have in mind doing additional guinea pig research on human beings. What we are recommending is that the agency undertake a careful review of its experience to date in using the various techniques and that it draw conclusions about their safety, effectiveness, etc., that can guide CIA officers as we move ahead. We make this recommendation because we have found that the agency over the decades has continued to get itself in messes related to interrogation programs for one overriding reason. We do not document and learn from our experience. Each generation of officers is left to improvise, that's not good, anew with the problematic result for our officers as individuals and for our agency. We're not unaware that there are subtleties to this matter, as the effectiveness of techniques varies among individuals over time, as administered in combination with one another, and so on. All the more reason to document these important findings. In November and December 2004, the CIA responded to National Security Advisor Rice's questions about the effectiveness of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques by asserting that an effectiveness review was not possible while highlighting examples of key intelligence. The CIA representative was obtained, I don't know what they're saying here, was obtained after the use of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques. The December 2004 memorandum prepared for the National Security Advisor entitled Effectiveness of the CIA Counter-Terrorist Interrogation Techniques begins. Action requested none. This memorandum responds to your request for an independent study of the foreign intelligence efficacy of using enhanced interrogation techniques. There's no way to conduct such a study. What we can do, however, is set forth below the intelligence the agency obtained from detainees who, before their interrogations, were not providing any information of intelligence like value. Okay, under a section of the memorandum entitled Results, the CIA memo asserts that the CIA's use of DOJ approved enhanced interrogation techniques as part of a comprehensive interrogation approach has enabled CIA to disrupt terrorist plots and capture additional terrorists. The memorandum then lists examples of key intelligence collected from HPD interrogations after applying interrogation techniques, which led to disrupted terrorist plots and the capture of additional terrorists. The examples include the Karachi plot, the Heathrow plot, the second wave plotting, the identification of the Guraba cell, the identification of Isa al-Hindi, the arrest of Abu Talha al-Pakistani, Hambali's capture, information on Jafar al-Tayyar, the dirty bomb plot, the arrest of Shajib Badat, and information on I don't know, Sky, Pakistan. CIA records do not indicate when or if the memorandum was provided to the National Security Advisor. A subsequent CIA memorandum dated March 5th of 2005 concerning an upcoming meeting between the CIA director and the National Security Advisor on the CIA's progress in completing the OIG recommendation review of the effectiveness of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques states, we, the CIA, believe this study is much needed and should be headed up by a highly respected national level political figures with widely recognized reputations for independence and fairness. On March 21st, 2005, the director of CTC formally proposed the establishment of an independent Blue Ribbon Commission with the charter to study our EITs. The CIA then began the process of establishing a panel that included redacted. Okay. Both panelists received briefings and papers from CIA personnel who participated in the CIA's detention and interrogation program. Redacted, the first panelist wrote, "It is clear from our discussions with both DO and DI officers that the program is deemed by them to be a great success, and I would concur the EITs as part of the overall program are credited with enabling the U.S. to disrupt terrorist plots, capture additional terrorists, and collect a high volume of useful intelligence on Al-Qaeda or AQ. There are accounts of numerous plots against the U.S. and the West that were revealed as a result of HVD interrogations. He also observed, however, that neither my background nor field of expertise particularly lends themselves to judging the effectiveness of the interrogation techniques taken individually or collectively." Redacted, the second panelist concluded that there's no objective way to answer the question of efficacy, but stated it was possible to make some general observations about the program based on CIA personnel assessments of the quality of the intelligence provided by CIA detainees regarding the effectiveness of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques. He wrote, "Here enters the epistemological, I think I said that wrong, but whatever, problem. We can never know whether or not this intelligence could have been extracted through alternative procedures. Spokesmen from within the organization firmly believed it would not have been." I'm going to stop here and probably move on to more of the JFK docs because we haven't done that in a little bit. Plus, there's a bunch of them this time around again. But anyway, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a good day. Bye.